They say anything a man can do, a woman can do better. And in the world of organized crime, some women prove that in terrifying fashion. Even behind bars, they command respect, loyalty, and fear. But who are these women? And what kind of prison is tough enough to keep them locked down? Today we have some of the most feared female cartel members behind bars. On March 5th, 2025, headlines across Europe blazed with shocking news. Magdalena Kraka, once known as one of the continent's most dangerous women, had been sentenced to 3.5 years in prison for drug trafficking and money laundering. At just 30 years old, Kraka had already lived a life that could have been lifted from the pages of a thriller. What she didn't know during those daring escapes was that time was running out. Her actions, however, calculated, would never last forever. Magdalena wasn't just another figure in the underworld. She was a boss. After her gang leader boyfriend was fatally shot by police, she rose to power in the infamous Zielonki gang in Poland. From there, she oversaw the smuggling of over 65 kilos of drugs, which included cocaine, marijuana, and amphetamines, across Europe. This woman had long avoided law enforcement while running a multi-million-dollar criminal empire. Born in Krakow, Kraka kept a low profile in her early years. Now, she worked regular jobs and gave off this impression of being an independent, fashionable woman. But everything changed once she got involved with members of the Zielonki gang in the early 2010s. By 2015, she became more than just somebody's girlfriend. She was calling the shots. Logistics, finances, laundering, she had her hands in all of it, and she built a tight operation using fronts, real estates, and coded communications, managing to move a large amount of drugs while staying under the radar. Now, what made Kraka really stand out was how she was balancing high-level criminal activity with a very polished image for society. Her Instagram posts showed her sipping champagne, posing in designer clothing, or lounging out on yachts. And all the while, she's taking care of drug deals, enforcing debts, and keeping a violent gang in line. In April 2019, after being officially charged in absentia, she went into hiding. The Polish Internal Security Agency launches an intensive operation to find her. She would evade capture by using fake IDs and constantly moving locations. But on September 17, 2019, authorities finally caught up with her in Slovakia. Now, she's transferred to Poland soon after, facing charges that painted her as the true architect behind one of the country's biggest drug syndicates. Even behind bars, Kraka didn't fade into the background. In the 2020 court proceedings, investigators presented evidence that she still held influence. She would communicate through coded messages, lawyers, and loyal associates. Informants testified that her crew remained loyal, following her lead even from the outside. Authorities were so concerned that she'd continue operating that they placed her under high-security conditions immediately. And by 2021, prosecutors uncovered how she laundered millions through fake businesses in Krakow and Warsaw. In 2022, they linked her to debt enforcement schemes that included threats and a lot of violence. Despite her incarceration, though, her psychological grip on her former gang remained strong. Many refused to cooperate with police out of loyalty or fear. Kralka's case remains one of Poland's most captivating criminal sagas. Her ability to command power, evade justice, and even lead from prison makes her a rare and terrifying example of just how resilient organized crime networks can be, no matter who's at the top. On September 20th, 2015, 30-year-old Melissa Margarita Calderon Oeda, better known in the underworld as Lachina, was quietly arrested at Cabo San Lucas International Airport. Usually when you saw her, she was flanked by armed bodyguards, but this time she's alone, attempting to board a flight to Culiacan without drawing attention, but authorities were waiting. Now, Lachina rose to infamy as one of Mexico's most violent and feared female cartel bosses. Born back on August 12, 1984, she had humble beginnings in Baja California Sur. And by 2005, she would enter the drug world, joining the ranks of the Sinaloa Cartel. Her climb was rapid and brutal, and she becomes a top enforcer for Las Fuerzas Especiales de los Damaso, the armed wing loyal to Damaso Lopez Núñez, aka El Licenciado, and his son, Damaso Lopez Serrano, aka El Menilik. And by 2008, she was leading around 50 sicarios, overseeing cartel operations in La Paz and Los Cabos. Her leadership style would seem ruthless, marked by executions, torture, and a lot of intimidation. Authorities would link this chick to more than 150 murders, with many being carried out with gruesome precision. But Calderon's ambition made her enemies. In 2014, internal cartel politics led her to being replaced by Abel Nahum Quintero, aka El Grande. Adding to her rage, her boyfriend, Eric Davalos von Borstel, was killed, allegedly on Quintero's orders. In response, Lachina breaks away and starts her own criminal faction. Her group expands rapidly to around 300 members, challenging her former cartel bosses, and she launches a bloody turf war. Her gang's red motorcycles became feared across Baja California Sur. But her downfall would begin in July 2015, when her right-hand man and lover, Pedro Hector Gomez Camarena, aka El Chino, was captured. This guy quickly becomes an informant, giving authorities critical intel on Calderon's operations, including the locations of secret graves. On September 20th, 2015, she's arrested while trying to flee to Culiacan. With no bodyguards by her side, she surrenders quietly at Cabo San Lucas International Airport. Now, even in custody, Calderon's grip on the cartel didn't entirely fade. According to prison intel reports and media investigations, she continued controlling her organization from behind bars. She would use a network of intermediaries, like corrupt prison guards and loyal lieutenants, to relay orders to the outside. She'd get messages through visitors, encrypted phones, and even handwritten notes smuggled in and out. In 2017, Calderon was moved from a regional facility to a high-security federal prison. However, she later secures a transfer back to La Paz, citing health and family reasons. Critics argue that this move restored her influence, as it placed her closer to her original power base. In 2024, Lachina was officially convicted of homicide and sentenced to 20 years in prison. While her role has diminished over time, Calderon's legacy as one of a few women to rise and continue to operate at the top levels of cartel power remains chillingly unique. Her story is a dark reminder that leadership in organized crime isn't limited by gender or even prison. Back in January 2012, the U.S. Department of Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, designated Marlory Dadiana Chacon Rosa, known as the Queen of the South, as a specially designated narcotics trafficker. Now, this would mark her as a central figure in the heart of Central America's drug trafficking and money laundering operations. Marlory was born in Guatemala, she established a vast network that supplied Mexican drug cartels, including Los Zetas and the Sinaloa Cartel, with significant quantities of cocaine. Her operations spanned into Guatemala, Honduras, and Panama, with monthly shipments moving from Guatemala into Mexico and onward to the U.S. In September 2014, Chacon Rosa surrendered to U.S. authorities and was held at the Federal Detention Center in Miami. Now, she pled guilty to drug trafficking charges in December 2014, and her cooperation with U.S. authorities led to a reduced sentence. In February 2019, her sentence is shortened to 5 years. But even behind bars, her control over the drug trafficking network remained unstoppable. Her organization kept running, relying on her deep connections and strategic leadership, despite the U.S. freezing her assets and a ban on U.S. citizens conducting business with her. OFAC had highlighted her group's vast influence and its involvement in laundering drug money through numerous businesses in Guatemala. Reports had suggested she had a major hand in negotiating her sentence. The secrecy around it had fueled speculation, with many claiming that she served less than 10 years thanks to her influence. Those details of her time in prison, though, were limited. She was likely placed in protective custody or even witness protection, and these precautions may have isolated her, but it didn't stop her from running her cartel operations. Even behind bars, Chacon maintained control, highlighting the resilience of criminal networks and the difficulty of dismantling them. In September 2016, nearly 2 years after her husband's capture, Clara Elena Labarin Archletta was arrested, allegedly found with 2 kilos of cocaine and firearms in her possession. Her arrest followed her husband's detention, which many believe signaled the end of the Beltran Leyva cartel. Clara was born on February 19, 1964, in Agua Prieta, Sonora, Mexico. And she wasn't just another cartel wife. She became one of Mexico's most powerful and feared women. Known as La Señora or La Patrona, Clara wouldn't simply sit on the sidelines while her husband, Héctor Beltran Leyva, was in charge of the BLO. But after his arrest in 2014, Clara took the reins, proving that she could not only survive but thrive in the dangerous world of these cartels. Her journey started with Héctor, who led the cartel after his brother Arturo died in a shootout in 2009. But Clara wasn't the type to stay in the background. She took over cartel finances, overseeing drug shipments, and even ordered some hits on rivals. As the years go on, her influence grows, and she becomes an integral part of the BLO, which, mind you, had been one of Mexico's most dominant criminal organizations. When Héctor was arrested in 2014, Clara was determined not to let that empire fall, so she stepped up, continuing to orchestrate violent operations, specifically in Acapulco, to regain control of lost territory. Her leadership kept the cartel in play for a time, even after its major players were picked off by law enforcement. But in September 2016, nearly 2 years after her husband's capture, Clara was arrested in Hermosillo, Sonora, with 2 kilos of cocaine and guns. The arrest marks the beginning of the end for her, and she's taken to the Female Central Federal Readaptation Center No. 16 in Coatlan del Rio, Morelos, a high-security Mexican prison. Once in here, she's stripped of her wealth and power. The lavish lifestyle is gone. But this didn't mean she was out of the game. Behind bars, she continued to influence, using resources at her disposal to keep her grip on the organization. Because even in prison, Clara made sure her voice was heard, still managing finances, controlling shipments, and giving out orders to those still loyal to her. Now, even after the BLO had fallen, Clara's influence didn't fade completely. Sources from the independent cartel of Acapulco said that she kept strategizing, looking to regain lost territory by teaming up with the CJNG. Now, she reportedly tried to negotiate a takeover during a trip to Acapulco, where she was protected by a group of hitmen known as Los Russos. By 2019, Clara was sanctioned by the U.S. Department of Treasury for her role in drug trafficking. Now, despite the collapse of her cartel, she remained a powerful figure in the underworld, making it clear that even in prison, she ain't someone to be messed with. And as of 2025, Clara Elena Labarin Archletta is still remembered as a woman who rose to the highest ranks of Mexico's drug trade and never truly lost her control, even behind bars. On May 26, 2018, Mexican authorities decided to get into the suburb of Zapopan, Jalisco. Here they arrest Rosa Alinda Gonzalez Valencia, wife of CJNG leader Nemesio El Mencho Oseguera, and a suspected financial architect of the cartel's empire. This is where our story begins. Valencia, often referred to as La Jefa, aka the boss, is a prominent figure within Mexico's organized crime landscape, notably for her alleged role in managing the financial operations of the Jalisco New Generation cartel. Born into the notorious Gonzalez Valencia family, she's one of 12 siblings who've been deeply involved in drug trafficking activities. Now, her family's criminal enterprise is known as Los Guinis, and it's been recognized as the financial arm of the CJNG. getting involved in different illegal businesses, including commercial ventures, beauty clinics, hotels, and restaurants. In 1996, Rosalinda married El Mencho, the elusive leader of the CJNG, and they had 3 children, including Ruben Oseguera Gonzalez, alias El Menchito, who was extradited to the U.S. on drug trafficking charges back in 2020. Now their daughter, Jessica Johanna Oseguera Gonzalez, has also faced legal problems, having been sentenced in the U.S. for her involvement in businesses linked to Daddy's cartel. According to Mexican authorities, she oversaw the cartel's financial and legal resources, managing over 70 fronts involved in money laundering activities. Her business sense helped the cartel expand its investments and turn dirty money into some legitimate profit. Rosalinda's first significant brush with the law would happen back in May 2018, when she was arrested in Zapopan, Jalisco, on charges of organized crime and money laundering. Authorities said that she was cooking the CJNG's books, a role that earned her a moniker like La Jefa. But despite the serious allegations, she was released on bail after paying 1.5 million pesos, which is approximately $78,000. But her freedom was brief because in November 2021, Mexican soldiers capture her again in Zapopan, with officials calling it a major blow to the cartel. The US DEA had referred to her as a narco queen, noting her deep knowledge of cartel operations and her key role in laundering its money. It is common for high-ranking cartel members like Rosalinda to attempt to exert influence from behind bars, often using those corrupt officials, lawyers, and coded messages to communicate with her ops on the outside. Now, given her pivotal role in the CJNG's financial hierarchy and her extensive familial connections, it's believed that she continued to have some level of influence over the cartel's activities during her time in prison. October 2015 would mark a turning point in the hunt for one of the most elusive female figures in cross-border drug trafficking. We have Ana Marie Hernandez, aka La Muñeca, the Doll, who was captured in Chihuahua City after nearly 5 years as a fugitive. She would use her personal connections, which included her marriage to a U.S. Fed, to become a key player in Mexico's narcotics trade. Known by aliases like Ana Marie Ledesma and Lily, Hernandez carved out a dangerous niche in the drug trade, connecting cartel operations between Mexico and the U.S. with chilling precision. Now, Hernandez's early life remains largely undocumented, but her criminal journey came sharply into focus around the early 2000s. She married Daniel Ledesma, a U.S. Customs and Border Protection officer in El Paso, which gave her unparalleled access to the border's vulnerabilities. Between June and October 2005, Hernandez had conspired with Ledesma to smuggle hundreds of kilos of cocaine into the U.S., earning over $100,000 in bribes by allowing cartel vehicles to pass unchecked through his lane. But her influence was far beyond a corrupt marriage. Described by DEA as seductive and strategic, Hernandez was a known associate of the Sinaloa, Juarez, and Gulf cartels, acting as a go-between for rival factions. Her looks and ability to navigate the high-stakes circles made her a respected figure in this game and a serious threat. Former DEA agent Mike Vigil said,
"Cartel leaders often recruit beautiful women into their ranks for leverage and loyalty, and Hernandez fit that mold perfectly."
In June 2010, Hernandez pled guilty to drug conspiracy and public corruption charges. She fled in January 2011, staying on the run for almost 5 years. Authorities would track her movements between Texas and Reynosa, Tamaulipas, one of the most cartel-contested cities along the border. She'd be finally arrested in Chihuahua in October 2015, extradited back to the U.S. in 2018 to face sentencing, where she would give 10 years to life in federal prison. We don't know about her time in prison. Maybe she was talking, maybe not, but she kept some influence. Experts say that people like Hernandez would run operations from behind bars, but there were no official reports confirming that. Her ability to stay connected to the cartel as a fugitive for years shows enough resourcefulness and the reach of her network. Ana Maria Hernandez is a textbook example of how personal relationships and systemic corruption can aid cartel logistics. She exploited love, loyalty, and law enforcement weakness to rise within the drug trade, and for years she got away with it. But her downfall marked a rare and significant blow to cartel infrastructure, showing that even the most alluring operatives can't outrun justice forever. It's September 12, 2011, in San Nicolás de los Garza, Nuevo León. The first woman connected to the leadership of Los Zetas was arrested by Mexican Marines. She was arrested with a gun, a stolen vehicle, and some drugs, which included cocaine and marijuana. Her name was Veronica Moreno Carion, but she was actually known on the streets within the cartel circles as La Flaca, or the Skinny One. According to Mexico's El Universal, she'd be the first woman to head a cartel plaza, a critical operation, and not just for any cartel. She led operations in San Nicolás de los Garza, a major suburb of Monterrey, on behalf of Los Zetas, which were some of the most violent militarized criminal groups in Latin America at the time. Born back in 1976, Carion's early career followed a far different path. She served as a municipal police officer in Nuevo León, the state she would later terrorize as a cartel enforcer and leader. Her inside knowledge as a cop made her a valuable asset when she switched. Turns out she made more money with the cartels. And after the arrest of Raul Garcia Rodriguez, aka El Sureño, in August 2010, Mireya reportedly assumed control of Los Zetas operations within the region. Her leadership came at a time when Monterrey was a battleground between Los Zetas and their enemies, especially the Gulf Cartel. According to statements released by Mexican security, she quickly earned a reputation for being strategic, brutal, and highly effective. Qualities typically attributed to her male commanders. She wouldn't be flashy or publicly feared. Instead, she would run her plaza with quiet intensity and sharp focus. But her reign would be short-lived. In September 2011, her luck ran out when she was pulled over behind the wheel of a stolen vehicle. Inside, cops found a stash of cocaine, marijuana, and high-powered firearms, evidence that spoke volumes about the life she was living within the empire she was trying to build. It wasn't just a random bust. That was a targeted operation, and her arrest was a symbolic victory for the state. Reports from El Universal and Milenio detail that she was transferred to a federal prison, where authorities claim that she continued to exert her influence through intermediaries, and would allegedly issue orders via corrupt prison personnel or contraband cell phones. Now, hard proof of her continued cartel activities behind bars is, of course, limited. Another woman leading the cartel like a boss, and prison isn't stopping her influence, especially when corruption and loyalty still operate on the outside. Today, Carion's a symbol of women's evolving roles in organized crime. They ain't just traffickers and couriers anymore, but commanders of violence and structure. Through her rise and fall, we see the brutal inner workings of Los Zetas and the increasing complexity of cartel leadership in Mexico. February 16th was a turning point for Mexico's battle against organized crime. On this day, authorities got Maria Guadalupe Salazar, known as La Tia, a powerful figure within the Juarez cartel and a key link between local cells and La Linea, the cartel's armed wing. Now, she wasn't as famous as, let's say, Chapo, but she did wield significant influence in one of Mexico's most entrenched drug organizations. Standing out as one of the few women to rise within a male-dominated command structure, Maria Salazar got her nickname from her familial tone and matriarchal posture within the organization, but make no mistake, she was as feared as any other sicario. Originally from Chihuahua, a hotbed of cartel activity due to the proximity to the U.S. border, she rose through the ranks by managing logistics, overseeing routes, and coordinating drug shipments throughout Ciudad Juarez, a city long ravaged by drug violence. Her nickname meant something. she reportedly helped recruit young men and women into cartels, often treating them with both discipline and a twisted maternal care. Salazar came under surveillance by Mexican intel after it was discovered she maintained frequent contact with both corrupt law enforcement officials and cartel lieutenants. Her ability to operate across multiple regions, coupled with her low public profile, made her a significant threat. In 2016, after a series of raids in the city of Parral, Chihuahua, she was caught and charged with drug trafficking, organized crime, and criminal conspiracy. Authorities said that she was a key player in maintaining communications between incarcerated cartel leaders and active cells on the street. What makes her especially noteworthy was her continued influence from within prison. According to local news outlet El Diario de Chihuahua, La Tia managed to pass orders through her visitors, lawyers, and a lot of corrupt custodians. Authorities said that she was in charge of small-scale meth and heroin movements and also maintained contacts in Juarez and El Paso, where the cartel had long been operating a pipeline of narcotics into the U.S. Even in pre-trial detention, she reportedly kept the network alive, relaying instructions via handwritten notes and memorizing phone numbers to trusted emissaries. Despite the many attempts by prison authorities to try to isolate her, including transfers to higher security places and limited visitation rights, Salazar was believed to have adapted pretty quickly, relying on her operatives outside to keep her connections intact. Her profile eventually becomes a case study among security analysts, tracking the evolving role of women in cartel leadership. No joke, unlike the flashy ones like Sandra Avila, La Tia embodied the quiet power of subtle yet commanding influence. While many details of her prison term remain sealed or undisclosed due to security concerns, the impression left by Salazar is lasting. She's seen as an example of how gender again does not preclude strategic prowess or even operational reach within the world of organized crime, even from behind bars.
México hay mucha corrupción, pero no es nomás con el narcotráfico, hay mucha corrupción en cualquier ámbito.
October 16th, 1960, Baja California, Mexico. A future queen of the drug trade was born. Nicknamed La Reina del Pacifico, the Queen of the Pacific, she would come from a family entrenched in crime, destined to become one of the most formidable figures in the underworld. Sandra Avila Beltran was born into cartel royalty as the niece of Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, founder of the Guadalajara cartel, and the daughter of another drug lord. You can imagine she grew up surrounded by power, money, and a lot of violence. And she eventually becomes a top figure in the Sinaloa cartel, facilitating massive cocaine shipments between Mexico and Colombia. In 2007, her arrest was a major victory for law enforcement. She was accused of being the key link between the Sinaloa cartel and Colombia's Norte del Valle cartel. Now you'd think that'd be the end of her influence, right? But not even close. She was a force from within prison. Her influence kept growing. She had money, connections, and most importantly, loyalty. Reports said that she kept running her business like nothing changed, through lawyers and all kinds of corruption. She would use her status to secure luxurious prison conditions and enjoy some special privileges that many inmates could only dream of. This woman made sure her business ran smoothly on the outside. She wasn't a fallen queen, locked away. She was still calling the shots. In 2012, she was extradited to the U.S., though, where she struck a deal with authorities and pled guilty to lesser charges, receiving a relatively light sentence. By 2015, she was right back in Mexico and walking free. Despite her legal troubles, she remains an icon of female power in the cartel world.